Okay. Today is the vlog for March 9th, 2018. And it's the end of the week. It's Friday night. And I don't feel all right. Being sick and working is exhausting. And with as busy as work has been keeping me, I am going to go watch a little TV before I go to bed, but I'm going to go to bed early tonight. I almost sat down and started watching TV without doing this first. I must have done about 20 of these so far, on account of it's the 9th, and I think the first one went up February 19th. So maybe a little less than 20, given that February is only 28 days. So let's see, it would have been 19 to the 29th would have been 10, but there was only 28 days. So that's 9, and then first 9 days of March is 9, so it's actually 18. 18 of these, with 340, a lot more to go. This weird little project, my little midlife crisis. So what do I want to talk about? I don't really want to talk about work because I never talk about work, other than say it's work and it's tiring. The sky was a weird sort of color as I was coming back from dinner. Just a little bit of light, enough that it could just be light pollution. And usually if you can see a little bit of light in the sky, that just means it's cloudy. That's something I learned. If there's snow on the ground and it's still cloudy, the sky is probably the brightest it can be at night. That's something I noticed in Minnesota growing up. The sky always seemed very, very bright the night of a blizzard, or at the least of heavy snowfall, because the sky was full of clouds that was carrying the snow down. The snow would pile up. Everyone would have their lights on, and the light would reflect off the snow and then be caught in the clouds. The clearest I remember this was the last Halloween I spent in Minnesota, where there was a blizzard. We had 3 feet of snow the next day. That was insane. I went trick-or-treating in a blizzard. I was a G.I. Joe. It was my costume. It was just this camouflage material basically made into a pair of pajamas or a sweatsuit by my mom. I was 9 or 10 at the time, and so this would have been like 91. So I would have been 10. And it was so cold that my parents made me wear a ski mask. I had made a helmet out of bike helmet wrapped with camouflage material again. So, which is actually what most helmets look like these days. So I got lucky that way. I don't know if they did back in 1991. Honestly, I don't remember what military dress was like back then. But my parents made me wear a ski mask, and instead of a G.I. Joe, a lot of people thought I was going to Halloween as a terrorist. This is the world before 9/11, when everyone was still sort of scared of terrorism, but no one thought that large-scale acts of terrorism would ever actually happen on American soil. So they sort of laughed at me, my big plastic toy gun, and my bike helmet wrapped in camouflage fabric. I don't want to talk about that anymore. I don't want to talk about snow because it hasn't snowed for a while. In fact, tomorrow the forecast is for upper 50s to 60s, and then the forecast for Monday is a high of 68. Spring is here. And just a couple weeks ago, I was complaining about the snow and having to drive in it. That's just how weather is these days. The sky was a weird color tonight. And for whatever reason, it made me think of a story I wrote a couple years ago around Halloween. No snow that year, but I have a weird relationship with the horror genre. Horror stories were never really my thing. I have I don't know that I haven't been diagnosed, but I'm pretty sure I have what could be described as necrophobia. I freak out. I get very, very unwell if I'm anywhere near a dead body of any sort. And if I see a dead body in a movie, the more realistically it's portrayed, the more likely it is to set me off. Um, People like to use the term hashtag triggered these days. I knew I had something like this well before that was popular. And the first time I really noticed it, and I don't know if it's the first time I really had it or if I've always had it and I just never picked up on it, was my grandfather passed away probably about 10 years ago now. And Grandma, bless her heart, asked for an open casket funeral. Now, she had read or heard or had somebody tell her that at an open casket funeral, the mourners are more able to say final goodbyes and move onward in the mourning process more easily. And that was sort of the case. I said goodbye to Grandpa for the last time. And the next day we put his body in the ground at the cemetery. And he was awarded a military funeral for his service in World War II. Yeah, that's how long ago he was a soldier. But U.S. military honors its soldiers, or at least it tries. And it was a wonderful service. I was a pallbearer. I helped carry the casket. But I was so uncomfortable seeing Grandpa like that. And just a couple years ago, a coworker of mine passed away. A young man of Thai descent. His parents were actually from Thailand. And they also had an open casket funeral. And it was so much worse because this was a guy younger than me. You know, he was probably, I don't even know if he was 30 at the time. He'd had a heart condition his whole life. That was actually the reason his parents moved to America, which is saying something because Thailand has fantastic medicine. They have some of the best doctors in the world, but they couldn't do anything for this guy. And he passed away after going out and dancing too much one night. It's a sad thing, isn't it? But he was a really good guy, and he was very positive, and he liked dancing, and he liked how girls would come out to the dance floor with him, and he just danced too hard. His heart couldn't take it, and he got progressively worse over the next couple of weeks until he finally passed. And I went and spoke briefly at his funeral because I'd been working closely with him right up until the end. And his brother was a good friend of mine. But it's hard, you know. I was very uncomfortable even walking up and saying goodbye to him. And then trying to muster up the ability to speak. I normally have no trouble speaking, believe it or not, in front of groups of people. But in that situation, it was really hard. So horror is a difficult thing because I hate to imagine all of that finality and that feeling of dread. But at the same time, more often in recent years, when I'm not dealing directly with the appearance of a cadaver in front of me, when I'm sort of left to my own devices and my imagination is allowed to do most of the terrorizing, I've found a sort of joy, a weird, perverse joy in horror fiction. I think the first time I really picked up on it, it was watching one of the old Alien films, which someone pointed out are horror movies, but I'd always sort of seen them as science fiction, you know, masterpieces. They are. I love the Alien films. I especially love Aliens, and I actually have a special fondness for Prometheus, which I know a lot of people think somewhat poorly of. If I ever made a movie as good as Prometheus, I would be quite thrilled. Even if it was considered Ridley Scott's worst work, it's still better than a lot of the best works of other directors. Looking at you, Michael Bay. But so, I think what really got me into it was a demo for a game that never happened called PT. PT actually stands for Playable Trailer. because that was what it was. It was a playable trailer for a game that's no longer going to come out called Silent Hills. It was created by Hideo Kojima, who is more famous for his Metal Gear Solid series, but he's done some horror in his life, and Oscar-winning director Guillermo del Toro. The two of them working together managed to scare the snot out of an entire generation of gamers with this little demo. And all it is you walk around in a hallway that basically never ends until you can figure out what exactly is going on. And it's not easy. I had to have someone do it for me, otherwise I would have assumed you were just stuck in that hall forever. Maybe I'll talk about that more later. Because I've hit my 10-minute mark. I didn't think I would have more than 5 minutes of material, but just thinking of stuff. Whatever. I feel better, at least. It looks like I'm finally getting over the illness. My throat feels a lot better tonight. And as always, I'm Eric Spornitz, and tomorrow will be better.